The millionaire didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. In the middle of a packed rooftop restaurant, surrounded by crystal glasses and silent witnesses, Grant Wexler looked at his own son and said calmly, "Stop using your hands, you're embarrassing me." The room froze. Across the table, a young man slowly lowered his hands, his face draining of color, years of shame tightening his shoulders in one familiar motion. No one intervened. No one ever did. Then a black waitress stepped forward. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply raised her hands and began to speak in a language the billionaire had spent his life mocking. "I'm done apologizing for existing." The words didn't come from her mouth. They came from the son he thought was broken. And in that moment, the most powerful man in the room realized something terrifying. He was no longer in control. What happened next didn't just shatter a family. It exposed a truth no amount of money could silence. The first thing people noticed about Nia Brooks was how quiet she moved. Not timid, quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from knowing exactly where you are allowed to exist and where you are not. At 29, Nia had mastered the art of taking up as little space as possible inside Harbor and Crown, a rooftop restaurant perched above downtown Chicago, where glass walls reflected money, power, and the kinds of people who believed those things made them better than everyone else. She wore the same pressed black uniform every night, hair pulled back tight, eyes lowered, smile neutral, invisible. That invisibility was not accidental, it was learned. As a black woman in a room full of white wealth, Nia understood the rules without anyone ever spelling them out. Don't speak unless spoken to, don't linger, don't correct, don't react. Especially not when a customer's tone sharpened or when a joke landed just a little too close to the bone. Especially not when the word girl was used instead of her name. So when Grant Wexler walked in that night, Nia felt it before she saw him. The temperature of the room shifted. Conversations dipped. Chairs straightened. Grant Wexler didn't just enter spaces, he claimed them. 60 years old, silver-haired, perfectly tailored, owner of Wexler Grand Hospitality, a man whose name sat on buildings and donor walls across the country. Power clung to him like cologne. Beside him walked his son, Miles Wexler, 22, shoulders tight, eyes already apologizing for his own existence. Grant led them to table 1, the elevated centerpiece of the restaurant. The table that reminded everyone who owned the view, the air, and sometimes the people in the room. Nia approached with practiced calm, setting down water glasses. "Don't hover," Grant said without looking at her. "Yes, sir," she replied softly. Her voice was steady, but something in her chest tightened as she noticed Miles's hands twisting in his lap, fingers moving in short, restrained motions, as if stopping themselves from speaking a language they weren't allowed to use. Grant noticed it too. "Stop that," he snapped, tapping the table. "We're in public." Miles froze, his hands dropped instantly, his face flushed, the familiar shame blooming fast. Sorry," he said, voice strained, shaped carefully around sounds that never quite cooperated. Grant leaned back in his chair, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I spent more money fixing your ears than most people spend on houses, and you still insist on acting like this." Nia felt the words land like broken glass. Miles looked down. Grant turned, scanning the room, searching for an audience. He always did. That was when his eyes settled on her. "You," he said, "come back here." Nia turned slowly, heart pounding once, hard, before she schooled her expression. "Yes, sir." Grant studied her the way people studied objects they were deciding whether to keep or discard. "What's your name?" "Nia." "No last name?" "Nia Brooks, sir." He nodded as if filing it away for later use. "Education?" The question caught her off guard. "Excuse me?" "Your education," Grant repeated. "College? Degree? Or is this," he gestured vaguely at her uniform, "where you peaked?" A few quiet laughs rippled from a nearby table. Nia swallowed. "High school, sir. I started working early." Grant smiled, satisfied. "Perfect." Miles looked up sharply, panic flickering across his face. Grant turned to the room, his voice growing louder, more theatrical. "My son here thinks he needs to learn sign language, thinks it's identity, community. All that nonsense, he scoffed. I've been trying to explain to him that sign language is a crutch, something people use when they don't have access to real solutions. His eyes flicked back to Naya. People like her. The word like hung heavy in the air. Nia felt every gaze shift toward her. She kept her spine straight, her hands still. Years ago, her younger brother Jamal had taught her the power of stillness. Don't let them see you shake, he used to sign with a grin. Grant continued, enjoying himself now. So I had an idea, a demonstration. Miles's breathing quickened. His hands twitched again, betraying him. Naya, Grant said, savoring her name. Do you know sign language? She could have lied. That would have been easier, safer. But something inside her, something old and aching, refused to stay silent. Yes, she said, I do. The room stilled. Grant blinked, then laughed. You? He looked around, inviting agreement. How convenient. Miles stared at her, hope and fear colliding in his eyes. His hands moved without sound. Please don't. Naya understood every word. Grant raised his voice. Here's the deal. If you can serve to my son for the rest of this dinner using only sign language, real sign language, not some memorized gestures, I'll give you $50,000. Gasps, whispers. And, he added, eyes gleaming, I'll admit I was wrong. Nia's heart thudded. And if you fail, Grant continued smoothly, you'll apologize to my son, publicly. You'll admit sign language is for people who can't do better. He leaned forward, and you'll lose your job. Tonight. Miles shot up halfway from his chair, hands moving fast now. Don't do this. He's cruel. He wants you to fail. Grant slammed his palm on the table. Enough with the hands. Silence fell again. Naya looked at Miles, really looked at him. At the way his shoulders curled inward, like he'd spent his life shrinking to fit into someone else's idea of acceptable. She thought of Jamal, of hospital rooms, of hands speaking when mouths couldn't, of the language she had buried because it hurt too much to remember. Grant smiled, certain of his victory. So, he said, what do you say, Naya? The restaurant held its breath. Nia straightened. I accept. Grant's smile widened, predatory and pleased. He had no idea what he'd just invited to the table. As Naya turned toward the kitchen to prepare the first course, her hands trembled, not with fear, but with something sharper. Purpose, memory, resolve. Miles watched her go, a single tear slipping free. For the first time that night, hope didn't feel like a mistake. And for the first time in years, Naya Brooks stopped trying to be invisible. Before we continue, what would you have done in Nia's place? Risk everything to speak up or stay silent to survive? Tell me your answer below. The first plate arrived like a dare. Naya Brooks carried it with steady hands, even though her pulse thundered so loudly she was certain someone could hear it. The dish was delicate, seared scallops arranged in a crescent, foam rising like breath in cold air. The kind of plate meant to intimidate. The kind of plate Grant Wexler ordered when he wanted to remind people where they stood. She placed it in front of Miles. Then she didn't speak. She raised her hands. Grant leaned back in his chair, smug, already convinced this would be over in minutes. He lifted his glass, taking a slow sip, eyes sharp with anticipation. Naya's fingers moved. Not hurried, not tentative, confident, fluid. Good evening, Miles. The signs were crisp, intentional. Her face shifted with the grammar of the language, eyebrows lifting, mouth shaping meaning. This scallop was seared quickly. The center is soft, start here. Miles froze. For half a second, his body forgot how to breathe. Then his hands began to shake. Not from fear, but from recognition. His eyes filled instantly as he answered, his movements clumsy at first, then faster. You're fluent. The word landed like a thunderclap. Grant frowned. What is this? He snapped. What are you doing with your hands? Naya didn't look at him. She stayed focused on Miles, continuing to sign. I'm here. Take your time. Miles swallowed hard. No one had ever said that to him in this room, in any room like this. Around them, the restaurant began to change. Nearby tables leaned closer. Forks paused midair. The performance Grant had planned was slipping out of his control. Enough, Grant said sharply. Bring the next course. The second plate arrived. Naya described it entirely in ASL. Texture, temperature, flavor. She asked a question, how he wanted it adjusted, and waited. Miles responded without hesitation. Grant set his glass down. This proves nothing, he said loudly. Anyone can memorize gestures. Nia turned to him for the first time. Her gaze was calm, unafraid. Then she did something that made the air leave the room. She signed faster. Not food, not pleasantries. She asked Miles about his day, about what he studied, about what he wished his father understood. Miles's response was immediate and emotional, hands flying now, words tumbling over one another. He's never listened. He thinks I'm broken. He thinks silence means weakness. Naya nodded, her expression tightening with something dangerously close to grief. I know. Grant stood abruptly. Stop this. Nia didn't. She translated aloud, her voice steady but resonant. He says he's spent his whole life trying to be someone he isn't, just so you won't be embarrassed by him. A murmur swept through the room. Grant's face flushed. That's enough. You're twisting his words. Miles slammed his hands against the table, the sound sharp, startling. He stood. Naya stayed beside him, anchoring him. Grant opened his mouth, ready to bark another command, but something stopped him. The room wasn't with him anymore. Miles signed again, slower this time, deliberate, strong. I am not a mistake, Nia translated without softening it. Grant staggered back a step, like he'd been struck. Sit down, he hissed. Miles didn't. That was when Naya spoke again, not as a server, not as a subordinate, but as herself. You asked if sign language was a crutch, she said. Let me tell you what it really is. Grant sneered. This should be good. She inhaled once. My brother was deaf. The words settled heavy. His name was Jamal Brooks. He was brilliant, funny, kind. He spoke with his hands, and he was more articulate than anyone I have ever met. Grant scoffed, but the sound lacked conviction now. I learned ASL because I loved him, Nia continued, not because he needed fixing, because he deserved to be understood. Miles stared at her, transfixed. 7 years ago, she said quietly, Jamal was killed by a drunk driver. He never made it home. The room held its breath. I buried him, Nia went on, and with him, I buried this language, because every sign reminded me of what I lost. Grant shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't part of the show. I didn't come back to it until tonight, she said, because watching you tear your son apart for being different felt like watching my brother disappear all over again. Miles's hands trembled as he signed, tears streaming freely now. Thank you for seeing me. Nia smiled gently. You were never invisible. Grant's voice cracked. This is manipulation. No, Nia said, this is consequence. She turned to the room. All of you saw a server tonight, a black woman in a uniform, someone you assumed had no history, no education, no voice, chica. Her eyes locked on Grant. You thought my silence meant ignorance. Grant opened his mouth, but nothing came out. And you thought your son's silence meant weakness, she added. Miles stepped forward. He signed one final sentence, each movement clear, unflinching. I choose who I am now. Nia translated it slowly, making sure every word landed. Grant looked around, desperate now, searching for support. He found none. Even his friends avoided his gaze. The power had shifted. The third course sat untouched. Grant Wexler, the man who owned the building, the brand, the room, realized something too late. He had lost the audience, and he had never felt smaller. Naya placed the next plate down gently, as if closing a chapter. The challenge was no longer about money, it was about truth, and truth once spoken refused to sit quietly ever again. Grant Wexler did not speak for a long time. For a man who had built an empire on words, contracts, speeches, threats, promises, silence felt like suffocation. The restaurant, once his stage, had become a mirror, and for the first time in his life, he didn't like what stared back at him. Miles remained standing. He wasn't shaking anymore. That alone terrified Grant. The boy, no, the young man, he had spent 22 years trying to mold, correct, silence, now stood upright, shoulders back, hands resting calmly at his sides. Not defiant, not angry, certain. Nia stood beside him, not touching him, but close enough that her presence felt like a shield. She had stopped translating. She didn't need to anymore. The truth was already in the air, thick and undeniable. Grant cleared his throat. "Sit down," he said again, softer this time. Miles didn't move. He raised his hands. This time, Grant forced himself to watch. "I'm done apologizing for existing." Nia spoke the words aloud, her voice steady but full. Not sharp, not accusing, just honest. Grant flinched. "You're overreacting," he said weakly. "This was never meant to." "It was always meant to," Nia interrupted quietly. Every head in the room turned toward her. "For years," she continued, "you've used humiliation as a teaching tool, fear as motivation, silence as obedience." She gestured gently toward Miles. "This isn't a rebellious phase. This is a human being asking to be seen." Grant looked at his son, really looked at him. And for the first time, he noticed the scars he hadn't caused with fists or words alone, but with absence, with correction, with shame dressed up as concern. "I did everything for you," Grant said hoarsely. "Everything I did was to make you stronger." Miles' hands moved again, slower now, measured. "You made me smaller so you could feel bigger." The words hit harder than any accusation. Nia translated them, even though part of her suspected Grant understood them without help. The manager, Dana Whitmore, stepped forward from the edge of the room. Her professional mask was gone. "Grant," she said, using his first name for the first time in 15 years. "What happened tonight? People won't forget this." He nodded numbly. He already knew. The chef emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel, eyes red. "Neither will your staff." Grant looked around. Servers, hosts, dishwashers, people he'd never bothered to learn the names of. They were watching him now, not with fear, but with something far worse. Disappointment. "I don't know how to fix this," Grant whispered. Nia studied him for a moment. Then she said, "You don't fix it, you face it." She turned to Miles. "What do you want?" The question startled Grant. He'd never asked it that way before. Miles hesitated, then sighed. "I want to learn ASL properly. I want to be part of my community. I want to stop pretending I'm broken." Nia nodded, then she looked at Grant. "And can you give him that?" The room waited. Grant swallowed hard. Pride screamed inside him. Habit, ego. Then he nodded once. Yes. It was a small word, too small to erase years of harm, but it was a beginning. Miles didn't smile. Not yet. He signed again. "And I want you to learn with me." Grant's breath caught. "You mean classes?" "Yes," Grant hesitated, then nodded again. "Yes." The words sounded different this time, heavier, real. Nia stepped back, finally allowing herself to exhale. She hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding herself together until that moment. The check never came. Instead, people began to leave quietly, respectfully. Some stopped to look at Nia, a few nodded. One woman whispered, "Thank you." Miles watched them go, his world subtly reshaping itself. Later that night, when the restaurant was nearly empty, Grant approached Nia slowly. "You never asked for the money," he said. She met his eyes. "I didn't do this for money." "I know," he replied, "but I owe you." She considered him. "Then do better, not just for your son, for everyone you've ignored." Grant nodded. "I will." Weeks passed, then months. Grant showed up to his first ASL class, awkward and uncomfortable, seated in a circle where no one cared who he was. He struggled. He failed. He laughed at himself for the first time in decades. Miles watched, cautious but hopeful. Nia returned to interpreting part-time. The language no longer felt like a wound. It felt like home. One night, she stood at the edge of a community event, watching Miles sign confidently with others, his face alive in a way she hadn't seen before. Grant stood beside her. "He's happier," he said quietly. "Yes," Nia replied, "because he's finally himself." Grant nodded. "You changed everything." She shook her head. "No, I just refused to stay silent." Grant took a breath. "I'm still learning." She smiled. "That's all anyone can ask." The world didn't change overnight. but one family did, and sometimes that's where real change begins. Before we say goodbye, let me ask you, how did this story make you feel? Do you believe people can truly change when they are confronted with the truth? If you like this story and want more like it, comment 111 below. Tell us, which country are you watching from? And if this story moved you, please share it. Someone out there might need it today.